This video is about the perimeter of algebra tiles and goes along with 6th grade CPM, Chapter 6, Section 2, Lesson 3. If you think about the last lesson that we did, you'll remember that we have our algebra tiles, we have our x squared tile, our x tile, and our unit tile. And remember in class what we did, and also in the video, is we labeled the sides. So if we labeled the length of an x squared tile, we have x along this side and x along this side. For an x tile, we have x length and 1, because remember that's the same length as our unit cube. And our unit cube is a length of 1 on each side. And you need to remember that for today's lesson. So remember, looking at the perimeter, we just add every side up. So if we're looking at the perimeter of the x squared tile here, we have x plus x plus x plus x. And we could write that as the perimeter is 4x for that one. For an x tile, we can say x plus x, which is 2x. And then we have the top and the bottom to include, so we would say 2x plus 2. And for our unit cube on the right, we would just have 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, which would tell us that our perimeter is then 4. And what we're going to do in just a moment is we're going to add connections and go from there. So let's look at that problem. If I have 4 x squared tiles with an x tile and a unit tile, what is my perimeter of this shape? First thing that I would do is I would go through and I would label every single side that I know that I have. Okay, and that makes it a lot easier to just write them all down. And remember, we're not including the inside here because that is not along our outside. And then what we can do is we can add them all up. So if I count my x's, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So then my expression would be 10x plus, and then I have my single units, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I would have 10x plus 4. Try this one on your own. It's a little bit more complicated, but I think you can work your way through it. Be especially careful at this intersection or where they're next to each other there. Okay, so I went through and I labeled all of my sides except for this length here, because this is where I think most people are going to get confused. And what this length here, and I'll color it in green, what this length really is that's x minus 1, because what we're doing is we're subtracting the 1 right here where it's touching. We don't know what our value is for x. It's a variable, so we have to do it as x minus 1. However, what might help you, that helps some people, is when they get here, they know that they're adding 1 because they're taking it away, but they're adding it back, and they're subtracting 1 here, so they will cancel these two out and just say that this length is actually x, and then we can ignore the other part. If that's confusing to you, then just make sure you put your 1 here and do x minus 1 for the part that's taken away. And then you can add everything together and see what you get. In this case, the perimeter would be 10x plus 4, which is actually the same the same perimeter that we had in the last image, but here we do have different shapes. So remember, perimeter, we're just adding everything together. Area, you're counting the tiles. And I'll tell you now, the most common mistake that you will make as you're working through this is you'll count up your values incorrectly. And so here you might say, oh, I have 8 x's instead of 10. And so you want to make sure that you're being really careful with that.